is riffing.
My tummy hurts. Pretty good, right bad.
Hey, good evening, guys. Nick with Off the Chart Trading. I'll be doing the night video for Tuesday, the 8th of February. Hopefully, you guys had a good day. Let's jump right into it. Figured I'd start with Peloton. Peloton was one I was keeping an eye on. It threw a lot of people off because they had their earnings pre-market, where most tech companies and most bigger companies end up, even though they're not huge, they're not really a massive company, but nevertheless, most of them report after the bell. So I think the fact that it had all this price action early in the day kind of threw people off, but ended up having a pretty solid day. I mean, hit almost $40 and it's up about $1, a little over $1 after hours here. It stinks because I called this one when it was just coming up to $30 a share, I think right before the bell, and I ended up going with another four-letter stock that starts with a P. It's PayPal, which is just, I'm sure everyone can attest to that. You end up looking at one thing and then you go with the other, and the one you initially called works great, and the one that you went with not so much. Granted, it's still early. We still got a couple days, so we'll take a look at PayPal after this. But anyway, Peloton was pretty solid, and the reason I want to start here is because sometimes like people are like, oh, it has to drop, and the earnings weren't that great. I mean, the CEO stepping down, eliminating 20% of their workforce. So, I mean, they're not in a good spot. I know they got a little pop the other day, I think on Friday afternoon, with the potential rumor of Amazon buying them out and stuff. And obviously that's going to happen when a stock gets beat up. And it's just, I don't know, it's weird for me to think that, they didn't capitalize on all of this and make it, I guess, into a better, bigger business. And then after the pandemic, it's like, oh no, what do we do? I don't know. It's just kind of crazy. But I mentioned it before. The mid to low 20s, I think, was a decent spot, because then you're back to below levels that you saw at the end of 2019 before the pandemic really started. So obviously there's more people that have Pelotons, me being one of them. We picked ours up around Black Friday or so. So I know they have a lot more subscribers now than they did back at this date. So you would think that that would equate for a higher stock price. But I mentioned this actually the first or second week of 2021, that this move was not sustainable, that, not everyone's going to be buying $2,000 bikes and paying $40 a month for the service. So I mentioned I wouldn't be shocked if it gets cut in half. And then here we are, a lot more than in half. So was it down like 80 something percent, 90%? So yeah, I guess closer to 80. I'm not gonna do the math right now, but it's down a lot. But so anyway, they had their earnings this morning, and they did worse than expected. But I think all of that negativity was already factored in, because you see this move down just after the last report. It's just been beaten down. Literally, you can see these are weekly candles. It's been stair-stepping lower for weeks. I mean, you're talking probably almost 12 weeks since obviously, 3 months, so about 12 weeks, 12 dots probably here, 12 candles of just straight down action. So when you have that type of action, it's almost like it's already factored in. So anything outside of the companies closing their doors next week is pretty bullish. And I still think that there's, like I said, I didn't listen to the call and I'm not a shareholder, but, the Cliff Notes version sounded like, they were aware of the situation. They were going to do certain things to make it more profitable and, go from there. But I still think there is a possibility that they end up getting bought out by one of the bigger ones, whether it be Apple, Amazon, Google, whoever. Or, maybe from the CEO switch and everything else, they are trying to organically fix it and grow from there. But obviously that is on the table, that, they're still fairly, after today, I don't know the valuation off the top of my head, but I know when they're in their mid-20s, they were only like a $7 or $8 billion company. So in the grand scheme of stuff, that's not really much for a Microsoft or a Amazon to pay. So it's still going to be there as a possibility, but we'll just have to see how it ends up unfolding. But I was mentioning it mainly for a day trade today, and unfortunately, even though that idea panned out, I thought PayPal would have been a better option, because the Benzinga alert mentioned there's a tab on the Benzinga Pro that shows insider buying, and PayPal was on there. And it was actually catching a nice bid out of the gate, and the trade was working for the first probably like 5-10 minutes, and then this market, nothing too surprising, it ended up coming back down a bit. But PayPal, look at that, from 310 all the way down to 120. It's just crazy. And from the outside in, if people don't really follow stocks, everyone probably thinks that the markets are doing okay. I mean, ES is, we're only what, maybe a few 3-4%, if that, from the highs, and I'm sure NQ has recovered. I mean, I know it has, but I'm just saying the percentage base from when we were down almost 20% on the Russell and 15-16% on the NQ, and whatever it was, I think 10-11% on the ES and the S&P. A lot of that obviously is, we're not out of the woods yet, but we've rebounded a bit. But a lot of stocks are like this. I mean, you have what, 2/3 of the NQ at 52-week lows. I mean, that fact, and it's probably more from last week, but it still holds up. That a lot of charts from good companies, household name. Everybody knows PayPal, and I think it's the biggest payment processor in the world. So outside of like a Visa or credit card, but I'm just saying in broad terms that they're a big company, and their earnings they've been beating. They've actually been doing pretty well. And it's funny to think that, is a rate hike of, 0.25 or 0.5 really worth the company being cut? It's been more than half. I mean, by 60 something percent. I mean, it's just crazy. So it's definitely catching a knife. And I have weekly calls that expire this week, and we'll have to see. I was just thinking that maybe it was today. I mean, you never know for sure that money would flow into it, but the insider buying that it alerted to and the price action out of the gate made me think there was a chance. Let's actually take a look at it at the 2-minute, because, like I said, right out of the gate, I had that first 2-minute candle, and I got in somewhere around here. I think it was just when it was coming up to 122 or whatever. So, I mean, we got all the way up to 123. So the calls were up like 30%, and then just bam, so I'm not going to say straight down, but pretty darn close. A little rebound into the close. So we'll see how it ends up opening tomorrow. And like I said, we still have tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. In a perfect world, this thing does end up getting, I don't know, an upgrade or a good report, or somebody big ends up buying it or something, just to get, some buying action into it, and get back up to around maybe 124, 125, and get out with a small profit in this name. But I think in the long term, PayPal is definitely a good one to have. And I think at this price, it's pretty reasonable. I mean, we're coming up to, we're not at COVID lows, but we're back to prices before COVID. And you cross-reference what they were doing earning-wise, they're doing better. And I'm sure they're bigger than they were back at the end of 2019. So a lot of these companies have undone their entire move up in these in these names, specifically the tech ones. Like you literally almost like a rainbow from one side to the other and completing it. So we'll just have to see how it goes. So I think the 120 level, we'll see if it holds. Like I said, best case scenario, we end up moving a little higher tomorrow, because obviously with options that expire the same week, time is not on your side. AMC was another one today. I don't even know where it finished, to be honest, but that was one we took. I got in when it was 1560, 1570. Got calls that expired this week, but I didn't want deja vu where I'm up, a couple $100, and then it slowly goes away and then goes red. So I ended up putting a stop into AMC. I had to step away from my computer, and I did get stopped out. Maybe like I think 20%, 25% on it. So nothing too crazy, but nice to lock in those quick, easy gains. And it ended up going a little higher, so that was nice. We'll see how this one. I feel bad for everybody holding this at 60, 70, 50. I mean, anything obviously above $20 something. You're thinking that you watch some YouTube videos, you read some Reddit posts, and you think that this stock's gonna somehow magically go to $1,000 a share because of whatever. And obviously the complete happen. People talk about the squeeze. I tell people a stock going from $2 and almost out of business to $72 is the squeeze. So, and then here it is coming back to, much lower levels. So we'll have to see how it is. It was meant for a day trade for me, but if there is a name that can move, it's definitely AMC. Obviously a lot of retail following it. And the other thing is too, and I was talking about on our Facebook group, is the squeeze itself is probably over. Who knows? I've been trading long enough to know that you never say never. Could it be $100 stock? Absolutely. Could it, path of least resistance to me would make, go back to these lows of, $5, $6 over a longer period of time. But, could it go to 100? Absolutely. But one thing I will say that might be a silver lining or a glimmer of hope for some of these people that maybe don't have super high averages is a lot of the companies like Melvin Capital and all these other hedge funds that were hammering this to basically go bankrupt, a lot of them covered here. However, other ones piled in short at these ridiculous prices. So obviously, if any of them went short above the current price, they're green right now. So obviously, there's no reason to cover. So could there be more pressure on AMC? Absolutely. But I will say there will more likely be another short covering rally, but nowhere near the levels that we saw here. More just profit taking, and obviously that will set off algos and high frequency and people like us that are in the active during the day that will get calls or shares or whatever, and you have that pile in effect. Where could the stock be up $7, $8, $9 in a day? Absolutely, but I don't think there'd be much follow through after that. So if it was me and I had shares, I would be out of the next pop personally. Take a look at the internals. I mean, overall, decent day. Slow flowed higher for the most part we had a little bit of selling midday, but it was bought up. We didn't really drop below. As you can see, not a single close after the initial open. No red candles, so no closes below the 34. You have one in the ES, but nice rebound and then going out at the highs. So overall, pretty solid day. VIX dropping, cumulative tick for the most part heading up. So not too bad. Advanced declines pegged. Nothing too impressive, but you can say, as you can see, day over day, the price itself is getting higher. So more stocks are advancing than declining each day. Obviously, you don't normally look at the advanced declines day over day, but I like to almost picture it almost like a trend that number of stocks heading higher versus declining is slowly moving up, almost like as if you would draw, a trend line or just follow the overall trend. TNX we talked about. I mean, that was today, right? Yeah, hitting a new 52-week high. That's the 10-year, so it just equates to the 10-year is at 1.97 right now. So coming super duper close to that 2%. So, but it's kind of, I mean, NQ finished up decent today, so maybe the correlation's not as strong as of right now, but definitely something to keep an eye on. Yen moving up, so keep an eye on that. Bonds are moving up a bit. Crypto had a nice run into the close, holding most of that. The dollar fell off a cliff. I was talking about that in the room earlier. Was it earlier this week or end of last week? That, I've never seen the dollar move this much up and down. I'm sure it's happened before, but, not that I watch it every single day. But these types of moves, trending wise, normally be sideways with a small move higher or lower. But, from 97 to 95, I mean, in a matter of a few days, it's a fairly big move. So, obviously, oil. Everyone's already feeling that at the gas pump, so it was above 90, I think, either earlier today or yesterday. So overall, I mean, here we are opening up. What time is it? Like 8 o'clock? Yeah, about 8:15, 8:18. We are opening higher here, so we'll see if this trend continues. One thing I did want to point out, and I think it looks the best on the profile, and you can feel it too if you've been trading intraday, is it's just basically been chop and balanced, not as aggressive as some of these previous days, but you have basically 4 days of balance here where you have the volume area for each of these days where it's 70% of the volume traded for that day overlapping. So, and then here we are attempting to break higher. So one thing I was talking about in the room is I was looking for potentially these previous highs that failed, and then you came up pretty close the next day. So, I like to round up basically above these levels. So I would say I'm looking for 45.35. I think if we can break and actually hold above that, that puts this profile, which is from 2.2, back into the mix where we basically try to fill this space. And obviously we had some more volume back down here the end of, I guess it'd be the third week of January. So if we are going to climb back higher, I think that's what you would want to look for if you're long this market or looking for something. I think if we can get above this area, which would be rounding up a bit and say 45.35, which we're not that far. What's 10 points overnight action, So we'll have to see how we open up. But not only breaking it, you don't want to see look above and fail, where we do end up doing something very similar to 2.2, where you are moving higher, you're attempting to break out, take out these previous areas, and you fail. And then you come back down, and then you literally spend the end of last week and early this week balancing. So and you can technically add these days. I mean, it resets once you end up going back into balance again. But you come above and then you come back down. You typically would come back down here. We didn't, and you can kind of just see once again just looking at those yellow bars overlapping volume. And if you zoom out, you can see that we've actually had, if I'm not mistaken, let me confirm that. Yeah, so for this contract, the most volume is basically right where we're at in this 4,500 area. So we'll just have to see. There's a lot of volume going on here. I'm looking for it to potentially break out and go higher. But with this market, you just don't know. So you can have an idea where you think something's going to go, but you need to be very careful trading that. So that's what I'm looking for tomorrow morning, is if we can break above that 45.35, and what does price do once that happens. Do we end up trying to shoot for 4,600 or taking out 2.2's highs? We'll just have to wait and see. But that's what I'm looking for. Like I said, it is setting up for that potentially at least a test of 45.35 area. What happens once we get there, your guess is as good as mine. But I would look for potentially some continuation move. That's typically what you would look for once you break out of balance for a move. But once again, the opposite can happen. And then if that does, keep in mind that we could test somewhere down here on the 44, 45 area. So anyway, as always, hopefully it's been helpful. Check us out at offthetcharttrading.com and on Facebook at Off the Chart Trading. If you guys have any questions, feel free to comment below. I'll be more than happy to help you guys. You guys have a wonderful night, and we'll see you at the next one.